Looks good behind you. There you
Okay,
go.
so now I'm live. Am I live?
Ask them if they can.
Can you guys hear me? Somebody give me a shout out and let me know. I've got Stuart here with me. Hello from Tennessee. Okay. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Hello from Tennessee. Hello from Clarksville, Rogers, Arkansas. Yeah, somebody type in and let us know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? No, it's on.
You're not moving there. All right, hold on one sec.
We're trying to figure this out, you guys, if you can see me but not hear me.
Here, type that real quick. Type, we got to get the microphone. Oh, wait. Yeah, they can hear you.
You can hear me?
That's what they're saying.
Okay. 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 I'm so sorry, you guys. Obviously, this is only our second one. And I am very technologically challenged, which is why I have the talented Stuart here to help to help me navigate the complexities of living in the 21st century. So you guys, it was just so fun last time that you came out in droves, and we had so much fun that I thought we would try doing it again for a couple of different reasons. So today I just want to visit with you as a form of procrastination, because I should be cleaning the studio that I'm sitting in right now, and I really don't want to do that. So I'm procrastinating by talking to you guys. But also to let you know, I know sometimes you have questions and you would like me to answer them. So what we're going to do in the future is hold some of these YouTube lives for members only, members of my YouTube channel, and that will kind of help us prioritize the questions that you guys have, and they will show up at the top. Is that how it works, Stuart? Or they'll show up and we'll be able to see them. But if you've got questions now, by all means, are they starting to come in? Okay, shoot me a question.
Where can I start to beat the weeds and tree roots?
Where can I start to beat the trees?
Weeds and tree roots is the first one I read.
Weeds and tree roots. Well, I'm not sure who that question came from. Stuart, help me over here. I guess I need to do.
Yeah, you can scroll.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I need to kind of keep.
Oh, make it big again. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, guys. And plus, I'm also working on a new computer here, so I'm kind of trying to figure out all of this. So I. Happily for you, I just did something, or we shot it yesterday on weed control that is organic, non-toxic, very, very effective. And we'll be putting that up later tonight, but it worked brilliantly. So I hope that you guys will give it a try. I'm kind of stinky and sweaty because I worked out this morning, and Hubs has been fishing in the Everglades, and he just got home bright and early this morning. So as soon as he got back, we went and we had kind of we had a brunch date. So that was kind of fun. Okay. So what else do we got, Stuart? Speak up loudly.
Do you use wood barriers?
Weed barriers. Do I use weed barriers? Not really. I know lots of you, when I have done videos before, you talk about putting down a cardboard barrier, and you find that's really effective underneath your mulch. But I don't do that because partly my spaces are so crowded and already mature and have just lots of living mulch. So I don't do that. And in terms of my gravel areas that I use as a surface, I have just crushed gravel down, and then I have a layer of that pea gravel with the flagstone on top. So I really don't use any kind of weed barrier.
What is your best deer repellent that you recommend?
What is my best deer repellent? I am probably not the best person to ask about that, because mine is an urban garden. I think sometimes when you see my house, when Stuart does those wide angle shots of my house, it looks like maybe I live in a larger piece of property than I really do, but I live in an urban area. And so I really don't have many problems with deer. But by all means, some of you, if you do have problems with deer and you have great deer repellent ideas, then share them. But I would, as a rule, I would say lots of plants are naturally deer repellent. And so that is one thing that you can kind of filter through as you're starting to install your landscape, is what plants are naturally deer repellent. And then also, just don't take it from me, because again, I only try to give you guys tips that I've had firsthand experience with or share from others. And in this case, I really don't have firsthand experience.
What are your favorite flowers to start from seed?
What are my favorite flowers to start from seed? Oh, well, that's pretty easy. It's the easy ones. So zinnias are so easy. Sunflowers are very easy. Earlier in the season, sweet alyssum comes up very easily from seed. And it really just kind of depends on what you're going for. I love some of the Whopper marigolds. But as a rule, I think anything that you want to plant as a cut flower will come up pretty well from seed. Like I like poppies, bachelor buttons. Some things I don't plant so much anymore as cut flowers because I simply don't have the room. But I would say for cut flowers, those are probably some of my favorites. Black-eyed Susans, I like those. A lot of you plant dahlias, and for whatever reason, I think it's just my growing environment here. I don't have enough space or enough room to really do dahlias justice, and they're from tubers, not seeds.
Here's two questions that are kind of similar. So I'm
Okay.
going to read both of them and let you answer. One, is mulch a good idea, or will weeds come back? And then somebody else asked, they know you love gravel, but what about mulch?
But what about mulch? Well, I consider sometimes gravel to be mulch. And yes, I find mulch to be very effective. And there are so many different forms of mulch. It just kind of depends on what aesthetic you're going for. So in the front yard, when I have used mulch in the past, it has primarily been a fine pine mulch that things will go to seed in fairly readily. Now, the good part of that is my self-seeders will set seed in them, like my golden feverfew and larkspur and foxglove and things of that nature, but sadly also will weeds. So that's kind of a hit or a miss. Lots of people in my area use a really good high quality being the operative term there, of cedar mulch or a cypress mulch. I typically don't use that. Depending on what area of the country you're in, a lot of you are here from South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, in other parts of the South, and you can probably use maybe pine needle mulch. But typically for me, I use just compost. And again, I don't have lots of bare areas because I'm so densely planted. So most of mine is living mulch. But yes, definitely mulch is the way to go if you live in a hot climate and you need to keep moisture in, weeds out, and try to kind of keep your soil cool. And yes, sometimes you can use gravel as a mulch.
All right. This one comes from Stephanie Myers, and she follows us.
Okay.
She's
Hi, Stephanie.
She's a member, and I'm a Myers. I come from the Myers family. Anyways, What fertilizer do you use for your annuals, and how often during blooming season?
Okay. What fertilizers do I use for my annuals, and how often?
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season, like when I'm trying to get my pansies and violas started, I would say I'm probably 85 to 90% organic, but there are times in the year when I just want something easy, and I use a hose end sprayer with Miracle Grow, and I just want to get them off to a really rapid start. And for me, the ease of that just works well. After that, for the most part, I'll only use Miracle Grow or a synthetic fertilizer in my pots. The rest of the year, depending on what I'm growing, like right now I'm using Espoma Bloom, which is a liquid fertilizer, and I'm using that on all of my geraniums, on any pots where I have annual color, because I really want to prioritize heavy bloom. I also love all of the Espoma organic line, liquid organic line. I do at the very beginning of the season, I typically put down on all of my beds an organic granular fertilizer, and there are many different kinds, just a well-balanced organic fertilizer that helps everything, whether it's annuals, perennials. In terms of the frequency, if it's not really hot yet, then I will fertilize my pots and my annuals about once a week. If it starts getting really hot and consistently temps are above 95, then I hold back on fertilizing because the plants are stressed enough just trying to coexist with the high heat. So I don't do a lot of fertilizing that time of year. Now, I am very intrigued with a product that I've been asked to try out and do a video on, and I'm going to be doing that this week, I think, called the Turtle Subscription Feed Program. And these are organic products that you can, I believe, subscribe to, and they just mail you what you need based on what kind of gardening you do in terms of like your raised beds, and there are certain quantifiers that determine how much you would need. So I'm going to be testing that out. But typically organics, and then a lot of it is just well balanced or predicated on what type of thing I'm growing.
All right, there's kind of another two questions that kind of go together.
Okay.
One of them is plant recommendations for dry shade, and then someone else in the DFW area, Anna, says plants for dry or for shade on a slope. So maybe those two things.
Okay, plants for dry shade. Well, I think in dry shade, let me just talk about the dry shade area that I have. I think most of you know that I'm not doing as many perennials, and I'm doing more blooming shrubs right now. So in my dry shade areas, I've got some Acuba japonica, which is also called gold dust plant. It's got kind of a variegated green and gold quality to it. I also love plum yews. I love the Utopia yews that are in the Southern Living Plant Collection. I also think that boxwood can handle a certain amount of shade, not a lot, but it can handle a certain amount of shade. It kind of depends on whether or not you're wanting something evergreen or something deciduous. Right now, that Little Henry Sweet Spire that I've showed you on some of my walkabouts, it is doing pretty well in some dry shade. The trick is to getting whatever it is established. And I think that is always what you have to kind of take into account. As always, I say just Google it. What works in dry shade in my zone, be in Virginia or wherever it is you are. On a slope, you might, again, so much of it depends on where you live. There are certain fern that will, in Dallas, okay, there are certain fern that would do really well. I also think in your area in Dallas, I have seen effectively and sometimes used it effectively, and that's Asian jasmine, which is a ground cover that you see both in sun and in shade in Dallas, and it's pretty vigorous. And if you can get it established, it will really take hold. In some cases, maybe a little too aggressively, but that's entirely up to you and what your situation is and whether or not it constitutes good garden fit. I also think some of the Nananandinas can handle some shade, lower growing Nananandinas. I like Blush from Southern Living. And then there are also, well, there's just a wide variety of certain ground covers.
All right. Deanna asked, do I need to fertilize my limelight hydrangeas?
Do you need to fertilize your limelight hydrangeas? I would say right now, again, it depends on what zone you're in or whatever, but I don't think it could hurt. Ideally, you would have done it a little bit earlier, but I think right now you could just don't overdo it. Use some kind of organic liquid feed or just kind of some organic fertilizer. In that case also, I think this is a wonderful instance where compost tea works brilliantly. And here's a wonderful tip. This is how I used to make my compost tea. I haven't done it in a while and I need to. And I would just buy a bag of compost, maybe composted manure or my own compost. And you know how you sometimes can get basmati rice in those burlap bags in kind of large quantities. And it's probably because my boys aren't home anymore and I'm not buying it in such large quantities that I don't have them. But I used to take those burlap bags, which obviously were very porous, and I would put my compost in there, and then I would put it in a container of water, put the lid on it, let it steep for more or less time, and then I would just use the herbal or the manure tea that I had brewed, and it was, you know, it was already composted, so there was no worry of it burning anything, and it's just a wonderful feed. And I would do it a lot with plants that I really wanted to give extra TLC to.
Okay, Amy Pitts says, I have a boxwood that lost all its leaves and they haven't come back. Is it dead or can I nurse it back to health? in Edmond, Oklahoma.
In Edmond, Oklahoma. I grew up in Edmond, or at least a portion of my growing up years. This is one of those cases where you just have to be pretend like you're in the Wizard of Oz. And is it really sincerely dead? Is it the Wicked Witch? And is it really sincerely dead? One thing you can do is scrape the brown wood and see if there's still green underneath. Now, sometimes I have found even when there's still green underneath, it still doesn't make it. But just be patient. This would be a great time to try some of that compost tea or any kind of organic fertilizer to give it a little nudge. See if it will come out. You might even prune it some. I don't know if it's been pruned already or hasn't been pruned, but give it a hard prune and just watch and wait. Now that the temperatures have risen, a lot of stuff will start, the heat will make things start kicking in. And you know, it's kind of a fun thing. I've got a couple of boxwood right now that I am hovering over, and every morning I go out there and I check to see if it's, you know, starting to put out any new little pinpoints, little buds of green growth on what look to be dead stems. So don't give up on it yet. Just keep trying. I'm also waiting on something I transplanted last year, a button bush, and I'm waiting to see if it is really sincerely dead or if it's just pretending. So I would give it a chance, do those things, give it a little TLC, and wait to see if you can get it to wake up.
All right. Donna Sevitz from Ohio. You recently instructed not to prune boxwoods when it rains. Can you explain why?
Yeah. And the same thing would be if the foliage is still wet from watering or for whatever reason. And that's because anytime you prune things, regardless of what it is, whenever you prune things or cut back foliage or anything like that, it just makes it, the conditions are much better for disease to spread. And since we're all kind of concerned about boxwood blight, about really any kind of fungal diseases, we want to do whatever we can to prevent the contagion and the spread of any diseases. And it just makes it that much more likely when the foliage is wet. So, and that's true of pretty much not just boxwood, but anything. Wait until the foliage is dry before you do any kind of pruning on them.
All right, we have Karen O'Connell, who is a member. And
Hi,
she
Karen.
asks, what is a good way to prepare a plant for removal from hard, compact dirt for transplanting to get a better location? She has 3 of these that I don't want to try to pronounce.
Oh, Pyrus japonica.
There you go.
Okay, number one, if it's already really hot and you're going to be planting them to an area that is maybe a little less brutal, then here's what I would do. And now it's probably still cool enough to do this. Wait, today here, at any rate, it's supposed to get up to 94, 95. So to the extent possible, look for a day that's going to be a bit cooler, preferably overcast or with a light drizzle. So that's what you want to do first. Secondly, you want to dig as much of a big root ball around the shrub as you possibly can. So that means that you're probably going to want to water the root ball pretty well first, let it really, really soak in, and then dig it up. Excuse me. Then you're going to want to prepare the place where it's going to live next in advance. So dig a huge hole, put some compost, some amendment in it, water the hole even before you transplant the shrub, then plant the shrub at the same level it was growing before and make sure that you really keep it moist and watered until it gets established. Hold off on feeding it. Just let the compost give it what feed it needs for right now. But it's just like anything. Just compare it to how you would feel if it were you. If you were that shrub, wouldn't you want to move on a day when it wasn't so hot and humid and there was a little bit of cloud cover? I know I would. So move it on that day. Oh my gosh, we've got Stuart. We have people from Sweden, from France, Dubai, Alabama. Hey, Judy Wolf in Alabama. I just see that coming up. Stuart and I were talking about this morning, or maybe Hudson and I were. I'm going to try to do a book signing in Alabama in coordination with the Southern Living Plant Collection. And I'm going to try to visit there maybe sometime the latter part of June or maybe in July, if not this fall. We're trying to coordinate lots of different things, but that would be fun to see. Some of you from Alabama, from Owasso, in New York City.
Scotland,
okay.
France, one just came
out. Morning Surprise. Stuart, you're getting lots of shout outs.
Hey, that's good.
Bay City, Michigan. Where all do I? Oh my goodness. Tasmania. Wow, that is so cool. Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Central Indiana. Oh, a good Hoosier there. I was born in Batesville, and I'll give a shout out now because I've got family all over Indiana. So here's the countdown. I've got a brother and his family in Jasper, Indiana. I've got a sister in Zionsville. I've got a brother in Carmel. I've got a sister in Fort Wayne. Who am I forgetting? I'm probably forgetting somebody and I'm going to get in trouble. But I've got so many siblings. They're scattered all over the place, but mostly scattered around in Indiana. Fort Worth, Texas. You got a question for me, Stuart?
I do. How do I keep aphids out of my hanging flower baskets and planters?
How do I keep aphids? Okay. I would say, first of all, get as much air circulation in that area as you can. Make sure that you prune out any kind of dead tendrils or dead branches or dead flowers, anything like that. The first step would be, because as soon as it gets hot, at least in my area, aphids tend to go on the wayside and spider mite moves into their place. But what I would do, of course, you can try to encourage ladybugs and other beneficials into your garden. But after that, I would first try to use some kind of physical spray. So really get in there, move your fingers up and down the stem and the branches and try to physically remove those aphids. Also use kind of a strong jet of water if you can, depending on what type of plant it is. And then after that, I would just keep checking it regularly. Again, try to encourage good air circulation, and if necessary, use some kind of insecticidal soap from Bonide or Safer or whatever. And you can also make your own. There are so many homemade recipes on the web.
All right, here's kind of a design question.
A design question.
So it's probably good. Where do you start when designing a backstep or hardscape and hardscape?
Okay, where do you start when planning a hardscape? Well, first of all, I would say, if at all possible, it's always helpful, though, albeit expensive, to employ the services of a landscape architect. But above and beyond that, I would say, first of all, be patient and pay attention to how you use and navigate the space. So much of it depends on your lifestyle and how you like to live. So are you going to be walking from your back door to a vegetable garden? Are you going to be walking to the pool? Are you going to be walking to a garden shed? And then orient the hardscape accordingly and think of it accordingly. I talk about something I call my theory of garden relativity, and that is everything from one place everything in the garden is relative to every other thing in the garden. So for me, I think in my book, I described kind of the placement of my back steps and how I decided that that's where I wanted them to go. Another thing to consider is ease of passage. So it also depends on, are the members of your household young? Are they older? Do things really have to be foot sure? Do you want something that's easy to maintain? Do you want something that's really permanent? You know, in other words, concrete versus mine that's like gravel. And those are just, and so I'm going to back up and just say, start by asking yourself lots of questions. And it may sound like a commercial, but in my book, I ask lots of questions that you can then answer that might help you make some decisions. What do we got, Stuart? Is it okay to make garden mistakes? Dig the flowers up and start over, or replace the plant. I'm nervous to start doing pressure. Okay, that was from Lovely Indeed. Can I just say, if you're not killing plants, you are not trying hard enough. I have killed more than my share of plants. And all you can do is just try to get over it. So pretty much, if I am introducing anything new to my garden, because now there's a lot of plants I've grown for a while, but if you're a new gardener and you're starting out, and it can be something as simple as a marigold, then just do a little bit of research. You can do this online. You can do it in a myriad of gardening books, but just say, what does a marigold need to grow? And then you try to provide that kind of environment. So do you start over again if a plant is dying? Well, if you gave it the appropriate requirements from the outset, then it might just need to get established. And once it gets established, it will flourish. If you just did like I did when I first started to garden, and then I would just get a chisel and pick to try to get through my hard pan clay just to make enough room for the root ball, stick it in, and then never water it, then no, it's probably not going to thrive. So just find out what it needs, provide that. If you've already done that, give it some time to get established. And again, try to plant it in the cool of the morning, in the cool of the evening, or on a day when it's just a little bit overcast.
All right, I got one from Brenda, who's a member.
Brenda, okay.
When you begin allowing your redbud trees to grow, did you attempt to transplant any? And if so, tips on how to beat the move. How to move very young. How to move very young
ones.
I'm sure everybody's typing fast.
Okay, so I have when I think I have told you ad nauseum that so many of the redbuds in my backyard. Okay, yeah. So many of the redbuds in my backyard were volunteers, and they were either planted by squirrels. They just came up from seed, and they come up and they volunteer everywhere. So my first recommendation would be, if one has volunteered in your garden and it is of any size and it's in a place you want it to be, then just coax it and and just keep an eye on it. Don't let anybody chop it down by accident, and just let it grow in that space. After that, I would say it's like you transplant anything. Yes, it can be done if you do it at the right time. Try to dig out as big a root ball as is possible. Even on a small plant, dig out as big a root ball as possible. And then again, have the hole already prepared and receptive to its new inhabitant before you replant it. And of course, before you dig anything up, water it really well so the plant isn't stressed when you are digging it up and trying to transplant it. And that's basically what I did. And it never hurts to mulch it in some compost and give it a little TLC.
Okay, Captivated Butterfly asks, is there a good product to kill grass in a flower bed?
Is there a good product to kill grass in a flower bed? I'm going to say yes. With some, it's like anything. It all depends. If it is something like Bermuda grass that is taken over and it is encroaching from your lawn and into the flower bed, then I would say the first thing is dig a really kind of a nice trench. I need to demonstrate that, Stuart. A trench along your lawn bed. Dig it up and then pull as many tendrils out as you possibly can. If it is like fescue, then the easiest thing to do is, it's just by hand, or if it's in an area where nothing else is growing, then just scrape it off with a hand hoe before it gets to be too big. A lot of it depends on just how bad a situation it is. Again, today, Stuart and I did a video on using vinegar in the garden as a weed killer, or really any kind of plant killer that you don't want. It worked amazingly well. We'll be posting that later today. The thing is, you have to be very careful because it's non-selective. In other words, you spray it on something and it will kill whatever you spray it on, whether it's the grass you don't want or any other plants around it. So it's like everything. It all is situation dependent, and quite often, sometimes things are easy, but quite often it isn't easy, but it's worth the effort.
Somebody says squirrels get to do the red bugs. They'd say they're your friends.
Well, yeah. Well, yes. So I guess, yes, I guess squirrels are my friends sometimes. They do aerate the soil a little bit, and they do keep me company on a lonely day if I'm not yelling at them.
Do you have any tips to keep, and that's delphiniums, is that the correct?
Delphiniums. Alive. Where's this person from? Do they say?
We could probably ask them. They probably tell us.
Yeah.
Christy V.
Okay, Christy V, where are you from? Do you have any tips to keep delphiniums? Yeah, tell us where you're at. If you're in Maine, there's probably all sorts of things you could do.
Chelsea Jones is now a member.
Okay, there are. Hi, Chelsea. There's all sorts of things that you can do if you live in Maine, because they want to grow in Maine. For the most part, I have found, and I talk about this in my book, delphinium don't want to grow well in Oklahoma. It just gets too hot. It just simply gets too hot. And even if they bloom, North
Dakota Zone 4.
In North Dakota Zone 4, then you may be able to grow them. So I would say talk to your horticultural extension center and just Google how to grow delphiniums well in North Dakota. And I would say, in general, here are some tips to make anything grow. Whenever you're planting it, dig a huge hole. At a minimum, 2.5 times the size of the root ball, at a maximum, even more than that. Give it as much room for those tender roots to penetrate as possible. Always, in general, if you can, give it some compost and loosen the soil, and then keep it really well established, or keep it really well watered until it gets established. And then I'm assuming that you planted it where it wants to grow to begin with, in your zone and in your environment. In Oklahoma, I don't even try to grow delphinium anymore because it just gets too hot too fast. They don't reliably come back. So that's why I grow larkspur.
Okay. Here's one I'm not sure. Well, do you think vinegar is a good weed killer? I don't know if they heard us talking about that.
Yes, I do think it's a good weed killer, but it has to be, but I think to be really effective, it has to be at a certain strength. So watch the video that we put up later today, and I talk about it at great length. It's already too hot for delphiniums in Atlanta. Yeah. It just, to me, it's not worth the investment. So I get a much better return on my investment with my larkspur than with delphinium. And I would much rather dedicate precious real estate in a small garden to things that perform really well and want to live here, versus things that don't perform well and don't want to live here. Okay, Todd said, sorry, Stuart, I kept the question going because I thought you guys did not see it. Hi, Todd.
No worries, Todd.
Okay, Todd, were you the one that told me by my front door that you thought it looked too busy and to move some of the things I had by my front door? Because if you were, I don't know who mentioned that, but I did. I agreed with you, especially as I'm trying to get a less cluttered look. And somebody asked me, I don't remember where, if I get offended or defensive when somebody says,
yes, that was him.
Okay, thank you, Todd. I did take your advice. I may change my mind later, but that's a gardener's prerogative. But I did take your advice. But somebody asked me, do I get overly defensive, or does it bother me if somebody criticizes my technique, or they don't like something about my house, or they don't, whatever. And I would say not as a general rule, partly because I am like most of you. I'm just doing the best I can under the conditions that I have to work in. Sometimes Stuart and I are trying to put out some information pretty quickly, so I don't always prepare well enough. But that said, I've often said there's more than one right answer sometimes, and a lot of times it's a subjective thing. And I might like something, and you may not like it, and you may not like something that I do, but I may like it. And so I just take that into account. The other thing is my tastes change. So I might like something in the past and I don't like it now, or for one reason or another, I want to make a change. It's like anything. I am like you guys. If constructive criticism or comments are made in a gracious tone and in a helpful tone, then I'm not a professional gardener. I'm self-taught like all of you. I am humble in that I can continue to learn. So it's all about the delivery. If you deliver it in a not pleasant way, sometimes people will say, now I don't mean to offend, but, well, that probably means that you want to rephrase whatever your constructive criticism is. Okay, what kind of question do we have now?
Let's see here. Are you still planning? Oh, the Jade Succulent Topiary tutorial.
Yes, we are. And it's just a matter of coordinating schedules. And Phil is very busy and I am very busy, but we will. Sometimes it takes me a while to fulfill my campaign promises, but we will definitely try to do that when we can. And that might be a good thing to do when it starts getting too hot, and Stuart and I don't want to be out in mosquito land.
Which is coming soon. Are you coming to Tulsa and Owasso?
I am coming to Tulsa. Oh, I'm so glad you asked me. Whoever asked that, I am so glad.
Charlene?
Hi, Charlene, and yes, I got your message about. Was it Charlene? Anyhow, I got your message about Owasso. I am going to be at Southwood. I believe it's Southwood Nursery in Tulsa, and I am doing that. I think the first part of June. It's going to be on a Sunday in the afternoon, and Stuart is actually putting together a graphic right now, which will show all of my book signings, but I will be in Tulsa, and I'm not sure if I'll be doing anything in Owasso. Somebody had sent me a recommendation from a place to do it in Owasso. I'm not sure. So we just have to look at our schedule. Hey, you two, I'm in Alabama. I have the hardest time. Okay. That just moved with lavender. What's your advice? I have a hard time with lavender too. It's because of our heat and our humidity. And all I can say is most of the time when I grow it in pots. Even then it doesn't last real long. It demands excellent drainage. And you just and also look for a variety that does well in heat and humidity. And there's one, what's it called? Is it called Phenomenal Lavender? There's a Southern Living Plant Collection variety that I think does well in heat and humidity if you can find it. But typically I just plan on growing it for the short term. I grow it in pots. I don't anticipate that it will be a long-term plant. If I did, I would add lots of grit to the ground, and I would mulch it in gravel and make sure that I didn't overwater it.
There's a bunch of questions coming in now.
Okay, Southwood Nursery. I hope you guys, would you help me spread the word that I'm going to be at Southwood? I want to say it's January 4th, but I promise I will let you know. We will put all sorts of stuff. And I'm also, some of you may follow me on Instagram, and I have been terrible about being on Instagram because I just have a lot of monsters to feed. But I'm going to try to get back on Instagram, which was my first home after all. So I'm going to try to really get back my Instagram mojo.
Molly turned off Martha Stewart to watch us.
Molly turned off Martha to watch moi. Well, Martha was in Oklahoma City just a little while ago, and she brought back some of my beautiful Eastern redbuds. They were on the plane with her. She showed it on Instagram. So I
told her that.
Yeah, thank you. And let me just say, I cut my teeth on Martha Stewart. I think she did just amazing. She's an amazing woman. I'm so impressed with her in so many ways. I wish sometimes that she would have displayed. She apparently has a really wonderful sense of humor, and I wish maybe she had displayed a little bit more of that in some of her shows and in some of her writings and things like that. But that's just me. You know, a lot of other people probably liked it on a more serious level. But she did everything she does on steroids. I do everything I do more modestly, and most of it I'm doing myself. And the thing is that it's also a good thing to say. There are so many different gardening channels that do all different kinds of gardening, wonderful gardening. What I'm trying to do are two things. Stuart and I want to communicate both accessible gardening. In other words, it's on a scale that is manageable, that most people can do, because it might look like I have a big garden, but it's a small garden. Accessible in terms of your budget, accessible in terms of your own physical limitations, and accessible in terms of where you can grow things, but also in a very stylish way, because it doesn't matter how big or how small where it is you live, you can still do anything in a stylish way. And I try to do that. Hopefully I sometimes succeed. What else do we got
Let's
going?
go here. I've been answering questions.
Oh, Todd.
Rose?
Todd. Okay, it must be Todd's days. I'm not so much of a perfectionist. I am reality based. Now, am I kind of a perfectionist? Yes, I kind of am. I'll keep doing it till I get it exactly the way I want. But does that keep me from trying things? No, it doesn't. Does it keep me from showing you my uglies? No, it doesn't. So it's important for me to show you things that are beautiful, but things that are also in a state of on the path to getting to beauty.
And then Russell asked about rose propagation tips.
Rose propagation tips. I think the easiest, well, it depends on what, again, it all depends. Depends on what kind of rose you're trying to propagate. If it is a rose that puts out long canes, then I would suggest just Googling rose propagation by layering. And that is where you just take a cane and you bend it over and you secure it to the ground, where it will send out roots and establish another plant, which you then sever from the mother plant. And I think that is one way to do it. You can't really divide roses. I've also seen people take cuttings. You sometimes see on YouTube people who start cuttings in a raw potato or things like that. There are different ways that you can do that. But for me, layering is the easiest way to do that. And maybe just getting it from a friend. A freebie from a friend is always a good idea. What else do we got?
Let's see here.
Have I planted hydrangeas in containers? Do you have to be careful to keep them from drying out? Absolutely, you do. In Oklahoma, where it's so windy and so hot, you always have to take into account anything drying out. And I would definitely, and the thing about growing hydrangeas in containers, this would be my best tip. Earlier in the year, you can have them in more sun. But as the sun gets stronger and temperatures get hotter, gradually move them into more shade, particularly in the afternoon. So morning sun and only some of that when it gets to be up in the hundreds, and then afternoon shade to protect them. But again, pots can be moved, something that I didn't learn until a while later. I'm embarrassed to admit that.
Somebody asked about future guest garden tours.
Guest garden tours, yes, we do have some coming up. We actually went to do a couple of them, and they wanted us to come back when they were more at their peak instead of the earlier in the year. So we have some of those coming up. I'm always on the lookout to do more garden tours. We're going to revisit, I think, some of your favorite gardens. So my friend John Turman in a la the famous Spanish bungalow, he has done, excuse me, he has done or made some changes to his garden beds, and we will go back and revisit that and maybe do a little bit of entertaining in his garden. We may have to do cocktails in his garden.
Oh, no.
And yeah, oh no. And or oh yes, because Hubs and I have been really good for the past 2 weeks. So it's time that we treated ourselves to cocktails in someone's garden. Yes, treat ourselves. And anyhow, we do have some, and those will be coming up because I am depending on the kindness of strangers when we do that.
We should go.
The Appletini tour is my favorite. Yeah, Rob, that is just, I love that garden. And I probably need to go back and do that one again and maybe start out in the backyard. Again, it's when people do these tours for us, and I so appreciate how you guys always thank the homeowners and the garden owners when we do these tours, because they really, it matters to them, and they really put on the dog for us. I mean, because they're going to have a lot more people via you guys seeing them on a YouTube garden tour than they would if they had a real garden tour in their own neighborhood. So they really try to make sure that everything for the most part is primed and perfect and beautiful. And I so appreciate that. We are also trying to arrange, for a while I was doing some tours around the world. So hey, you guys from around the world, if you have a beautiful garden and you want to submit a YouTube video of a garden tour to put on my channel, please do so. By all means, anytime you want to get in touch with us, just contact us at support@lindavater.com and we will see what we can do. I am such a cool person because I come from such a wonderful big fam. You said that? No, Marie said that. Would you agree this is the reason you are so neat? Trick question. I guess it's a question whether or not I am neat to begin with. But I will say this, that I have a wonderful family. We are all so different. We are different physically. We are different politically. We are different geographically. But I would say that we all get along, and I've been very, very fortunate. I think because growing up wasn't really easy for us. My mom died. I've shared with you this before, that my mom died at a young age. Chris, you just sent us $10.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I want to just also say that another reason Stuart and I want to do some of these is because we have found out that it might be a good fundraising tool for causes that are near and dear to me. So many of you out there I know are struggling and have been stricken with cancer. And so we're looking at maybe doing a fundraiser for the American Cancer Society, refugee organizations, anyhow, different organizations that are near and dear to my heart. And this is a way that Stuart says that we can raise money for those causes. And in the future, this one we're kind of doing on a spur of the moment. We'll try to give you more notice.
Yeah, in the future, do some for members only.
For members
for
only.
Both public and members only.
Yeah.
Here's a good question that I think she's asked a few times. Holes have been being eaten in her hollyhocks. Any recommendations?
Hollyhocks are just, in my experience, I do love them, but hollyhocks are just magnets for bugs. And I think they used to, I've probably shared this trivia before. So if I have, just bear with me, but I still think it's fascinating. There used to be an expression called, I've got to go visit the hollyhocks, because hollyhocks, I've shared this with you before, haven't I, Stuart?
Oh, I probably heard it, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I've heard everything.
Hollyhocks were I guess, for a while traditionally planted, at least out here on the prairie, around outhouses. And so people would say, I have to go visit the hollyhocks. That doesn't help with your question, however. I would say if something is eating a hole, then probably you want to use some kind of powder. And I would suggest Captain Jack's, it's made by Bonide, Captain Jack's Dust, and sprinkle it on the foliage. Remove any leaves that look like they still have critters munching on them or whatever. That's basically what I would do. I grew them for a while and they really can do amazingly well, but I found that I didn't really have enough good air circulation. And some of these things, to me, they're gorgeous, but they really need a broad and a larger canvas than I can provide for them to be resplendent. And I think I do them a disservice when I try to cram them in the back of a corner or up against a fence. I think I kind of do them a disservice.
Like this, though, it says they appreciate the skincare video.
Oh, the skincare video I did. Always a concern of mine. We all spend, I know those kind of videos that we do, they don't resonate as well with all of you that are gardeners, but I do get asked those questions a lot. And I'm always eager to learn about all sorts of different things. And I am as concerned about all of you premature aging and skin damage, and I want to look as good as I can for as long as I can. And I think that's a healthy mindset to have. So thank you for saying that. I too had rust on my hollyhocks. Yeah. Be careful to not water the leaves of hollyhocks. Yeah. And also water at the base, because they also they're subject to everything, I think. Powdery mildew, all sorts of things, but water them at the base and water them in the morning. And I think that really makes a difference. And some of you, my mother-in-law used to say, she used to make some kind of little dolls. If any of you know how to do this, she used to make some doll skirts or some kind of little dolls out of the hollyhock flowers. Joshua says you don't look a day over 30. Linda. I'll pay you later, Joshua.
Do you have a favorite slug or snail killer?
Yes, slug or snail killer. And let me just do my moment of gratitude, because this year didn't I just mention this to you the other day, Stuart, that I have not had as many sow bugs or slugs or snails as I normally do, because it was such a dry winter. So there was a silver lining to our very dry winter. I use Sluggo. It is pelletized iron, and it is supposedly pet safe, and it is non-toxic. It's non-synthetic. So that's typically what I use. You do have to reapply it after a rain, but that is what I use, and it's effective.
Zone 8 planted daffodils for the first time.
What's your advice on getting them to sprout out on every spring? I don't know about zone 8 and daffodils, because I'm in zone 7. If they have to be pre-chilled, or if you're so warm that it's difficult to grow them there. Honestly, I'm not sure. You might want to call your local extension center. Yeah. Do you plant portulaca? Yes, I have in the past. It can kind of go to seed and get a little overly rambunctious here. But a friend of mine, Kamala Gamble, she has a CSA, and she grows portulaca for salads, and she puts it in her CSAs for salads, and I really do like the taste of it. So when I get purslane that comes up, it's normally as a weed, and I dig it up and sometimes eat it. But I've also grown it in pots, because it's really a heat lover.
Alice asked what's the best way to divide black-eyed Susans. I've seen them do that.
Oh yeah. They're taking on a fair bit. So I a lot of times after it rains, you can just pull up big clumps, and they will come up fairly easily. You just take a clump, you can't kill them, and just sever it down the middle, and then discard, give away, transplant half of that chunk, and just leave the other chunk in place. I actually had a magnificent stand of them, and they were gorgeous, and they were featured in Southern Living magazine and Garden Gate numerous times, because they were wonderful. But again, I'm wanting a different kind of garden, and also they spread like wildfire. They can be overly aggressive. And be careful how I use invasive versus overly aggressive. They can kind of take over. So I think they're a great plant, but you can really don't worry. You can't kill them. So just rip as many out, dig many of them out as possible. It's not hard to minimize and reduce the clump that you have. Somebody asked about my new QVC line. Yeah. Or if you find out, let me know. So much of that has been extremely difficult because of shipping, because of materials, for a lot of different reasons. I did a couple of weeks ago put a Prince Charming Buddleia, Prince Charming butterfly bush on there. Some of it's going to be hard goods, some of it's going to be soft goods. But honestly, I don't really know. And like so many of you who work in manufacturing and different kinds of businesses, we are just really at the mercy of a lot of different things that we have no control over. And so I'm just trying to be zen about it. What is my favorite thing to do in Santa Fe, Patricia? It is eat. Without question. I love me a good, huevos rancheros. And we love going to Pascual's. We have some of our favorite, places, new and old. We just love to eat, but I love to shop. And when we were there, I had a great time on Canyon Road. I discovered a new artist that I am infatuated with named Qvc Mills. And I just got, somebody had asked earlier about a home tour, if I would do another house tour. And yes, I will. As soon as I get that print that I got from Qvc Mills framed, I'm mixing up a couple of things in the inside of my house. So I will do that. Love going out to Bishop's Lodge. Love to hike, though that was limited a little bit this time because of Hub's knee. But we just love to spend time outdoors. We love to picnic. We just love it. If you were to lose my large oak in the front, would you replant? What would you choose?
That's a good question.
That is a wonderful question. That is a wonderful question, SD. Here's my answer. I hope to move before that tree goes, because it would break my heart. It might break my spirit a little bit. And I hope to move before that happens. So I'm not even going to answer that question. And I know some of you are asking, I talk about moving, and yes, I am itching to move, but my problem is I can't find a place that I think has more potential, more beauty, and is what I want. That's better and more lifestyle suited than what I have now. And I certainly am not suffering where I am. Am I, Stuart? So
we have a few more questions before we're done.
Okay.
Coming up on you.
Okay.
So let's just try to find a couple here. And bigger property. Somebody asked you moving smaller, right? I know what you want to do.
I want my house is not real user friendly. It's a 1932 house. It's not real user friendly. So I don't want to say that we're kind of at that age where we want to downsize. I don't really like that. We just want one that's a little bit more user friendly. And that doesn't necessarily mean newer, though, just a little bit more user friendly. And I'm itching I love my English Tudor. I adore it. But I would really like to find like a Spanish bungalow or something like that, because I've got different kind of style itches I want to scratch. But it's nothing imminent. And by the way, so many of you have come by, have come by from all over the place, all over the place. And Stuart and I thank you, and you're always so sweet. And we always ask you, does the garden look the same, bigger, smaller, better, worse? Do I look fatter, thinner? And does Stuart look like what you think he looks like when you just imagine him, since he's always the man behind the man behind the camera. And typically, this is something people always comment on, is my weird hair. People always say typically that it looks smaller than it appears on camera because of the kind of lenses we use. And I would say practically every garden I have ever seen looks smaller when I actually visit it than it does on camera. Was my house built with a different stone on the front? All of a sudden, I'm getting that from people who said, gosh, did they patch it? Apparently, you guys think it doesn't look good, or some of you don't think it looks good. No, this was an original 1932 English Tudor house. Yeah, we can't change things even if we wanted to. It might look like it doesn't match, partly because it's on camera, but it's never looks to me like it doesn't match. Have you ever thought that, Stuart? And there's lots of homes in my neighborhood that are of a similar style that also have stone on front. So no, it was original. It was completely original to the house, and it was the Tudor aesthetic of that era.
I might have a fun last question.
Okay.
Although I'm sure nobody wants to be the last question.
Okay.
Kelly C says she's going to the UK this summer and has heard you talk about being over there and getting inspiration from there. Do you have any recommendations as to what gardens she should visit?
Well, of course, I would say you want to visit all the ones that they tell you to visit. So obviously, Beth Chatto's garden. I love my favorite, though I haven't been in years, but my favorite is Barnsley House. I love Rosemary Berry's garden. Now, I have not been there since her death, so I'm not sure how it's translated since it is since it's now a resort. For a while, I was really in contact with them, and I need to be, because it would, in my dream world, Stuart and I wowould go over there, do some shooting at Barnsley House, and meet with some of you over there. And there was a time where I was talking with them, that was before COVID, about going over there and doing something. And so that was kind of that. But obviously, what gardens you need to go to, because they're in every garden guidebook. Those are the just the classic ones. But I have found if you what I would be really interested in now, obviously, Sissinghurst, those, but what I would be really interested in seeing are private residence gardens. I would really like to see some of the townhouse gardens, some of the courtyard gardens that belong to private residences. And if they ever have any kind of private garden tour there, I would love that. Okay, so that's
it. More than we planned.
Yes, we did. We did more than we planned.
It's hard to stop. It's fun.
It's hard to stop, because you guys are just so fun and so gracious, and I'm so sorry that we can only address a number of what you say. But here's what you can do if you do. Wait, I have to read this about ginkgo trees. Something about ginkgo trees. I don't know what question it is. Do you love the ginkgo trees on grounds as much as I do? My son's a third year. Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. I love ginkgo trees, as does our friend Phil. He loves ginkgo trees too. And sounds like we all love University of Virginia, which I do. My son went there. And so anyhow, I hate to say goodbye, you guys, but I'm going to have to.
But there'll be more. That's the whole point.
But yes, but there will be more, and we will.
There'll be information we get to.
Yeah, we will do it better. This one we kind of just decided to do at the last minute, and we will start doing a schedule of these where we will have a regular schedule. And we will post it early enough so that you guys can set an alert or something to remind you, because I need to set an alert and a reminder for just about everything in my life. And but I know we only answered a few of your questions. Again, if you want to move up in the queue, then
I can try to explain it if you want.
Okay, Stuart.
Essentially, no, we can leave it there.
Okay.
Just essentially, if we'll be doing members only ones, and the members only ones is where there'll be a little bit better chance at getting a question answered, because there'll be hypothetically less people in the chat.
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay. So there'll be fewer, and it will just be more of a select group. Because they'll just be members only, and I'll be able to answer maybe questions that are a little bit more individual. And some members have been with me for years, and we've developed something of a relationship. So if you want to be a member and you want to make sure that I see your comment or that it comes up in the queue, then definitely you want to be a member.
And I'll send out an email to everybody.
Stuart will be sending out an email, and we'll be posting stuff to that effect. And the other thing is, what else was I going to say? Oh, but we will also be continuing to do these overall public YouTube lives, and we will also. So it's not just for members. We will continue to do 2 different kinds. So if that's a perk that you like, then definitely you might want to become a member. So there you go, as I like to say. And here's my question of the day, because I have to have a question of the day, no matter what I do. If for those of you that are still hanging in there, here's my question of the day. I don't realize that I sometimes use the same expressions over and over again, because it's just how I talk. But if you have your favorite Vaterism, then let me know. Apparently I say ad nauseum, and I say, there you go. I say, there you go. And I say, but I digress. And I don't know what other kinds of things I say. So if you will let me know some of the things that I say, Stuart thinks it's funny, and he wants to put on do some kind of funny reel. So there you go. It was so much fun hanging out with you guys. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for hanging out with the 2 of us. Now go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Okay. Everybody's asking how to be a member. I'm going to keep typing. I wonder if I can keep typing after you stop it.
Okay, I stopped. Okay.